The human boy who made water from trash and saved an alien world. The twin suns of Iridia 9 burned like open furnaces above the endless orange desert. Waves of heat rolled across the cracked land, turning distant ridges into mirages. The settlement of Grainline sat in the middle of that emptiness. Rusted shelters, faded flags, and people who were tired of hoping for rain. In the middle of a junkyard behind a small prefab house, a boy worked with his hands covered in grease and sand. Kai Morales, 13 years old, crouched beside a pile of broken metal, old pipes, and shattered drone parts. Sweat ran down his face, but he didn't stop. His fingers moved fast, connecting wires and tubes like someone solving a puzzle only he could see. His mother's voice came from inside the hut. "Kai, don't go too far again." "I won't, Mom," he shouted back, though his eyes never left the machine. 6 years ago, his mother had brought him to Iridia after his father vanished during a mining conflict. Since then, life had been nothing but dry winds and empty water tanks. The wells were dying, and the people were scared. No one believed they could survive much longer. No one, except Kai. He pushed 2 pieces of metal together until sparks jumped. "Come on," he whispered. "Just work once." Footsteps crunched behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew that sound. "So, dirt boy," said a teasing voice. "What useless junk are you building this time?" Kai grinned without looking up. "Good afternoon to you too, Sarah Valen." Sarah was 17, tall and alien, literally. Her skin shimmered faint lavender, and her silver hair was tied in a braid that caught the sunlight. Most of the Lyrians in Grainline ignored humans, but not her. She liked to mock Kai's experiments, though secretly she admired them. "It's a sky condenser," Kai said, tightening a bolt. "If it works, it'll pull water right out of the air." Sarah laughed softly. "There's no water in this air, genius. It's bone dry." He shrugged. "Then I'll teach it to bleed." She knelt beside him despite herself. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious," Kai said. "Look." He fitted a cracked solar cell to the top of the machine, then connected a glowing blue cylinder scavenged from an old shuttle core. The box hummed. A faint light rippled over its surface. Sarah frowned. "What did you just plug in?" "An energy regulator." "Don't stand too close." The machine rattled, then went still. Kai's heart sank, until a sound like gentle rain filled the silence. From a small nozzle, a fine mist began to fall. Droplets formed on the edges and rolled into a dented metal cup below. Sarah stared, eyes wide. "Impossible." Kai lifted the cup. Inside was half a handful of clear water. "Not impossible," he said quietly. "Just new." She took the cup and sniffed. It smelled clean. Real. "You made water?" "From air," Kai said proudly. "Split the molecules, pull hydrogen and oxygen, put them back together." Sarah looked at him with wonder. "Kai, do you realize what this means?" He smiled, a little nervous now that the weight of it hit him. "Maybe we won't have to leave." For a long moment the two sat in silence, listening to the gentle hum of the machine and the distant whisper of desert wind. Above them, the twin suns lowered behind red dunes. The air shimmered gold, and the first stars began to appear. Finally, Sarah spoke. "The council won't believe this unless you show them." "I'll show them tomorrow," Kai said, "but I'll need your help." She nodded slowly. "All right, dirt boy. Tomorrow." That night, Kai sat by the flickering glow of the harvester, watching droplets gather inside the cup again and again. It wasn't much, barely enough to wet his hands, but it was proof that even on a dying planet something could still grow. He didn't know that out beyond the dunes, shapes were watching him, tall, cloaked figures whose eyes caught the starlight. They had seen the mist rise from the boy's machine, and to them it looked like magic. For Kai Morales, it was only the beginning. But for Iridia 9, it was the night the sky learned to bleed. Morning broke cold and pale over Grainline. The suns had not yet climbed high enough to burn away the thin mist left from the night, and people stepped carefully through the dust, carrying cracked canisters toward the half-dry communal well. Among them, whispers spread. The human boy made water. By the time Kai Morales reached the council dome, a crowd had already gathered. The place wasn't really a dome, just an old cargo shell flipped upside down and patched with sheet metal. Inside sat the leaders of Grain Line. 2 humans, 3 Lyrians, and 1 silent robot clerk that still carried the emblem of a forgotten company. Sarah Valen stood beside Kai, chin raised, while the elders watched them with mixed expressions, curiosity, doubt, and a hint of fear. Elder Vial, the oldest Lyrian, tapped the table with his silver claws. "You claim this? Contraption can make water from nothing?" Kai swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he lifted the small box onto the table. "Not from nothing," he said. "From the air itself. There's hydrogen and oxygen everywhere. We just never tried hard enough to pull them out." Murmurs filled the hall. A human councilman leaned forward. "Then show us, boy." Kai glanced at Sarah. She gave him a small nod, the kind that said, "You've got this." He flipped the switch. The box hummed low, then began to glow from within. The council flinched, expecting an explosion. Instead, a thin ribbon of mist curled upward, catching the light like silver smoke. Droplets formed, dripping into a glass jar. Gasps rippled through the room. The robot clerk whirred and recorded the readings aloud. Water quality, 99.8% purity. "It's pure," Kai said softly. "Cleaner than anything from the wells." One of the elders rose to his feet, staring in disbelief. "This is impossible. Atmospheric harvesters haven't worked here in decades." "Because they tried to copy old Confederation models," Kai answered. "This one adapts. It changes its intake based on the air's charge. The dry air isn't a problem, it's fuel." The room buzzed. Hope, long buried, began to rise again. But Elder Vale's eyes narrowed. "And where did you find the parts?" "In the scrap fields east of the ridge," Kai said. "There's more old tech there, maybe enough to build a bigger unit." Vial exchanged a look with the other Lyrian elder. "The eastern ridge is dangerous. Sandstorms, old war machines buried in the dunes." Sarah stepped forward. "Then I'll go with him." "You're a child," Vial snapped. "I'm 17, she replied sharply. "And without water, we'll all be dead soon, old man." The hall fell silent. Then slowly the human councilman nodded. "Let them go. Give them 2 escorts. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain." By sunset, the decision spread through the camp. People came to Kai's hut with scraps of wire, rusted filters, and spare cells, offerings to help the boy who might save them. Kai thanked each one, though inside he was scared. He had never been beyond the ridge. As night fell, he packed tools into a bag and checked the harvester one last time. It purred softly, pulling a steady stream of mist from the air. Sarah arrived dressed in a travel suit, her silver braid wrapped under a hood. "Ready?" she asked. "Not really," Kai admitted, "but we're going anyway." The next morning, they met their escorts at dawn: Thane, a quiet Lyrian ranger with mirrored eyes, and Hawk, a rough human guard carrying an old plasma rifle. The suns rose behind them as they set off toward the red horizon. Hours passed in silence until Hawk suddenly raised a hand. "Movement," he muttered. Figures appeared on the ridge ahead, tall and lean, wrapped in sand-colored cloaks. The wardens of the waste, nomads who rarely came near settlements. Their leader stepped forward, copper-skinned and scar-marked, carrying a spear made from lightning rod metal. "You trespass on sacred ground," he said in rough common. "What do you seek?" Kai's heart pounded, but he forced himself to speak. "I seek parts, to build a machine that makes water." At first the nomads laughed, until Kai lifted the box and switched it on. Mist rose again, delicate and shining in the harsh sunlight. The laughter stopped. The leader watched the droplets fall, his expression unreadable. "You take water from the empty air," he whispered. "You do what even our ancestors could not." He lowered his spear and gestured for them to follow. "Come, you will tell me how you did this, boy who calls the rain." As they walked into the blazing dunes, Sarah leaned close and whispered, "What now?" Kai looked at the shimmering horizon. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I think we just stepped into something much bigger than a machine." Above them, the sky burned gold, beautiful, deadly, and waiting to be tamed. 8 years had passed since the boy made the desert weep. The dusty huts of Grain Line were gone, replaced by a thriving town called New Grain Line, surrounded by endless green fields that shimmered beneath the twin suns. From the air, it looked like an emerald wound carved into the planet's rust-colored skin. The hum of the Atmo harvesters was everywhere now, a steady, soft vibration that filled the air like a heartbeat. Tall metal towers rose from the ground, drawing invisible threads of moisture from the atmosphere, releasing clean water into silver canals that fed crops from other worlds. For the first time in a century, Iridia 9 was growing food again. Kai Morales, now 21, stood on top of a maintenance platform overlooking the fields. His clothes were dusty, his hands calloused, but his eyes were bright and alive. The boy who once built with junk was now the colony's chief engineer, the Skymaker, as the settlers called him. Beside him, a drone hovered, scanning the air. "Humidity levels stable," it announced. 2.3% increase since last quarter. "That's better," Kai murmured, adjusting a dial on his datapad. Maybe too good. He didn't notice the quiet footsteps behind him until a familiar voice spoke. "You're worrying again, aren't you?" He turned and smiled. Sarah Valen approached, her silver hair braided and streaked with sun-bleached gold. At 25, she was the colony's agricultural director, the woman who had turned the warden's ancient desert seeds into living crops. Her lavender skin glowed softly in the sunlight. "Someone has to worry," Kai said. "The systems are running faster than we planned. If humidity keeps rising, it could change the weather entirely. Isn't that the goal?" She teased. "Maybe, but too much change draws attention." Sarah's smile faded. She knew what he meant. Heliox Industries, a massive off-world corporation, had recently sent surveyors to study New Grain Line. Their shuttles gleamed like mirrors, their uniforms spotless. They promised trade, help, investment, but Kai could smell greed the moment he saw their sleek logos. Later that day, the council gathered in the new glass hall built from melted desert sand. The meeting was tense. The Heliox delegation had arrived, led by Director Reese Prell, a tall, scaled Saurian whose polite smile never reached his eyes. "Your success is remarkable," Prell said smoothly, looking out the window at the fertile land. "A planet reborn from death. And now we discover something even more valuable. Novium ore beneath your soil, a mineral that powers star drives. You sit upon a fortune, friends." Elder Vial, still part of the council, nodded eagerly. "If we let them mine a little, we could gain protection, new supplies." Kai interrupted. "No, we scanned this ground ourselves. There's no novium here." Prell's smile didn't falter. "Perhaps your equipment is outdated. Or perhaps your maps are lies," Kai said coldly. The room went silent. Prell studied him for a moment before replying. "Young man, the Confederation thrives on cooperation. It would be unwise to stand alone." After the meeting, Sarah caught up with Kai outside. "You shouldn't provoke them like that." "They don't scare me," he said, though his jaw was tight. "They didn't come for Ori, Sarah. They came for the tech." "Our harvesters?" He nodded. "They know what this means. If humans can turn dry planets into water worlds, no one will need Heliox's terraforming contracts anymore." That night, Kai walked the edge of the settlement alone. He watched children, human and Lyrian, splashing in irrigation channels, laughing as if the desert had never existed. He thought about how easily it could all be taken away. Up in the darkening sky, a Heliox transport ship drifted silently, its lights blinking like a predator's eyes. When Sarah found him later, he was still staring upward. "You can't fight the whole galaxy, Kai." "I don't need to," he said softly. "I just need to protect this one place." Sarah stepped closer until their shoulders touched. "You built life from scrap and dust. Maybe now it's time to build trust too." He smiled faintly. "Trust isn't easy when the people smiling at you are counting your oxygen." A warm wind moved through the fields, carrying the scent of green leaves and wet soil. For the first time, it smelled like home. Neither of them noticed that across the ridge a figure was watching from the shadows, a man holding a Heliox datapad, recording everything. His eyes glowed faintly with the reflection of the harvesters. The desert had learned to live again. But life always attracts the ones who profit from death. The heat came early that morning, dry, sharp, and biting. The sky was clean and cruelly blue with no sign of wind. It should have been an ordinary maintenance day in New Grain Line. But when the first alarm echoed through the valley, every worker froze. The hum of Harvester 3, the largest water tower in the Eastern District, had stopped. Its constant low vibration, the heartbeat of the settlement, was gone. Within minutes, the air grew heavier and the temperature began to rise. Kai Morales was already running when the second alarm wailed. His boots threw up clouds of red dust as he reached the facility gates. Inside, chaos reigned. Engineers shouted, water lines hissed, and emergency lights flashed in crimson pulses. "What happened?" he demanded. Renevale, his apprentice, stood by the control console, face pale. "It wasn't a system fault," she said shakily. "Someone cut the coolant conduits deliberately." Kai knelt beside the panel, scanning the damage. The cuts were surgical, clean, perfect, made with plasma precision. "A professional job," he murmured. "Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike." He straightened, feeling the eyes of his crew on him. "Seal the intake valves. Redirect flow from Harvester 2 before the pressure collapses." As they scrambled to obey, Kai's mind spun. Heliox Industries had been circling them for weeks, offering deals and sending survey teams. This was no coincidence. By noon, word had spread through the colony. Water flow was down 40%. The crops would wither within days if the system wasn't repaired. In the council hall, the air was thick with argument. Elder Viel slammed his palm on the table. "We can't survive like this. Heliox has offered relocation to their new colony on Virtus. Maybe it's time to accept." Kai's voice was low but steady. "So they break our machines, then sell us safety?" "That's not mercy. That's control," Viel glared. "You accuse without proof." "Proof is what I'm going to find," Kai replied. Outside the hall, Sarah Valen caught his arm. "You're not thinking straight." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time," he said. "This was sabotage." "I'll prove it." Sarah led him to the agricultural lab, locking the door behind them. "You might not have to," she said. She pulled up a hidden terminal screen. "I've been monitoring Heliox transmissions since they arrived. Look." The hologram flickered to life. Encrypted messages between an unknown sender inside New Grain Line and a Heliox channel labeled Prel Prime. The words glowed like poison. "System failure complete. Next target ready." Kai felt his stomach twist. "Someone here is feeding them. And paid for it," Sarah added. "Credits transferred through a false account. Look at the timestamp. It matches the night before the harvester went down." She brought up another file, 2 geological maps side by side. One was Heliox's official scan, full of glowing veins of novium ore beneath the settlement. The other was the colony's own environmental data, empty, no novium. "They lied," Sarah said. "The ore doesn't exist. Then what do they want?" Kai asked, though he already knew. She met his gaze. "Your invention. The harvesters, they're not after minerals. They're after the power to reshape worlds." Kai leaned on the console, anger burning in his chest. "And someone in our own council helped them." The truth settled like dust. For years he had believed the colony was a miracle of unity. Humans, Lyrians, and Wardens working side by side. But now he saw cracks forming, deep and dangerous. He turned to Sarah. "If Heliox plans to take the tech, they'll strike again." "Then we'll be ready," she said firmly. "We'll make sure their next move fails before it begins." That night, Kai walked the perimeter walls. The desert was silent except for the faint whine of the remaining harvesters. He thought of his mother, of the promise he'd made to her as a child, to survive, to build something better. The stars above Iridia looked cold and watchful. Somewhere out there, Heliox ships waited, their scanners fixed on this tiny miracle of life. Kai clenched his fists. "They think they can break what we built," he whispered. "Let them try." Inside the lab, Sarah stared at the flickering monitor one last time before shutting it down. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, determined, and afraid. Far away in the shadow of the eastern ridge, a single red beacon blinked once, then twice. A signal. Someone had received their next set of instructions. Tomorrow, something far worse than sabotage would begin. The suns rose late behind a wall of dust, turning the sky the color of copper. For the first time in years, New Grain Line felt fragile again, like the desert had been waiting for a reason to take back what it lost. In the medical ward, Sarah Valen sat on the edge of a cold examination table, her hands trembling. The scanner's blue light rippled across her abdomen. Dr. Honori, the colony's chief medic, a calm, gray-skinned Lyrian who had studied human anatomy more than anyone else, frowned at the readings. Sarah tried to laugh. "What's wrong, Doc? Don't tell me I'm allergic to water now." Honori looked at her, eyes soft. "No, Sarah, you're pregnant." The world seemed to stop. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. "Humans and Lyrians, our biology doesn't match. It's never happened." "And yet it has," Honori said. "The scans don't lie. The embryo shows both DNA sequences. It's developing normally, but the data is new, uncharted." Sarah's breath caught. She thought of Kai, his rough hands, his tired smile, the way he always faced the impossible like it was a challenge. "Does he know?" Honori shook her head. "Not yet. And until we understand what this means, it might be better if no one else does." Sarah nodded, dazed. A mix of wonder and fear swirled inside her. The impossible had happened again on this planet. A child of two species born in a place that shouldn't have been alive in the first place. Before she could think further, her communicator buzzed. Kai's voice sharp and urgent. "Sarah, meet me at the north gate. We have visitors." When she arrived, she saw a familiar banner fluttering in the heat. The Wardens of the Waste. Their leader, Chief Corin, rode at the front of a caravan of sand-colored skimmers. His once black hair was now streaked with gray, but his eyes still burned bright. Kai stepped forward, clasping his arm. "You came." Corin nodded solemnly. "You made the sky bleed once, Skymaker. Now others come to make it bleed again." Sarah's heart tightened. "Heliox?" "Yes," the chief said. "They have touched other deserts beyond this one. Where they promised life, they brought machines of fire. They dig until nothing remains. 3 warden tribes driven from their homes. We followed their path, here." Kai exchanged a look with Sarah. The truth was spreading faster than the dust storms. Heliox's ore mission wasn't mining. It was conquest disguised as progress. Corin gestured to the horizon. "They will move soon, but we know their habits. Their machines think the desert is dumb. The desert remembers everything. We can help you fight back." He opened a weathered pouch and placed a small black device in Kai's palm, a smooth pebble with silver veins running through it. "Touch this and the ground will wake. Old traps, old defenses, buried before your ancestors walked this sky." Kai turned the device over, awed. "Why give this to me?" Corin's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Because you gave us water, and because we believe the desert has chosen you." Before Kai could respond, the colony alarms wailed again. A metallic voice echoed from the speakers. "Emergency council session initiated. All department heads report immediately." Sarah reached for his hand. "They're moving faster than we thought." Kai nodded grimly. Prell's making his play. They hurried through the main streets as settlers peered out of their homes. Inside the council chamber, Director Prell already stood at the center, surrounded by his polished guards. Beside him, Elder Vale, the traitor they now suspected, sat proudly, as if nothing had happened. Prell's smooth voice filled the hall. "Our patience is over. Your settlement's instability proves what we feared. You are not fit to manage this technology. Hand over the harvesters and Heliox will ensure your safety." Kai stepped forward, calm but fierce. "You don't want safety for us. You want control for yourself." Prell's scaled lips curved into a smile. "Such big words for a boy who plays with junk." Sarah clenched her fists, but Kai only said, "Then maybe it's time I show you what junk can do." He placed his original prototype, the same device he built as a child, on the council table. Everyone leaned closer as it began to hum. Prell's guards reached for their weapons. "This little thing," Kai said, "started everything. But I've made upgrades. It doesn't just make water now. It listens." A holographic map appeared above it, real-time scans of the ground beneath them. Heliox's fake ore map flickered beside it, glowing red with lies. "There's no novium here," Kai said coldly. "You forged the data. You bribed one of us to sell out this colony." Gasps filled the chamber. Prell's reptilian smile faltered. All eyes turned to Elder Vale, whose face had gone pale. "He lies," Vile stammered. "Then why is your signature on the Heliox transmissions?" Sarah shot back, projecting the stolen messages. The room exploded in shouts. Prell barked an order in his language, and his guards drew their plasma rifles. Before the first shot could be fired, the council doors burst open. Warden warriors poured in, silent as wind, their cloaks blending with the sand-colored walls. One of them hurled a small sphere that exploded in a flash of blinding light. Chaos. Screams. Energy bolts slicing through the air. Kai grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her behind a table. The hum of his prototype continued, its sensors still recording everything. Sarah pressed his hand against her stomach. "Kai, I have to tell you something before—" "Not now," he said, eyes scanning the chaos. "Yes, now." Her voice trembled. "I'm pregnant. It's yours." The noise of battle seemed to vanish around him. He stared at her, the meaning sinking in, his breath shaking. "That's impossible." Sarah smiled faintly. "So was everything we've done here." Then the chaos rushed back. Kai's expression hardened. "Then we have even more to fight for." He picked up his prototype, the same machine that once pulled water from the air and ran straight into the storm of fire. Because if the sky had bled once for him, he would make it bleed again to protect the life he loved. Smoke drifted above the settlement like a bruise in the sky. The sun hit the haze and turned it blood red. New Grain Line, once a place of laughter and crops and humming water towers, now echoed with the metallic crack of weapons and the shouts of soldiers. Director Prell's Heliox strike force had arrived before dawn, armored transports rolling through the dunes, corporate soldiers in glinting suits marked with the hex symbol of Heliox. They came to claim the harvesters. Inside the council chamber, the air stank of ozone and dust. Kai Morales crouched beside Sarah, shielding her from a burst of plasma fire that scorched the wall above. Their prototype device, still glowing faintly blue, lay between them, recording everything. "Ren status," Kai shouted into his communicator. The apprentice's voice crackled through static. "Harvester 2 is secure for now, but 3's coolant line is gone. We've got power rerouted. Eastern sector holding barely." "Keep it that way," Kai said, ducking as another blast rocked the chamber. He turned to Sarah. "We can't stay here." Sarah nodded, clutching his arm. Her lavender skin glistened with sweat. Her breath's coming fast but steady. "The wardens?" "They're waiting outside the perimeter," Kai replied. "Chief Corrin said he'd draw them out of the open when we give the signal." "How?" Kai lifted the black pebble Corrin had given him, the desert trigger. He said this will make the sand wake up. They slipped through a side corridor, emerging into the daylight chaos. Drones zipped through the air, firing short energy bursts at fleeing settlers. Children huddled behind overturned carts. The once green fields were being crushed under armored wheels. Sarah's heart twisted at the sight, but Kai grabbed her hand and kept moving. They dove into a narrow service tunnel that led toward the hydroponic gardens, a maze of glass tubes, glowing water tanks, and rows of alien crops. There Kai stopped, catching his breath. "From here we can reach Harvester 2. If they take that, the colony dies." Sarah leaned against a tank, closing her eyes for a second. A flicker of dizziness passed through her. "I'm fine," she said before he could ask. "You focus on saving the planet. I'll focus on not fainting." Kai almost smiled. "You're impossible." She met his gaze. "You love that about me." He did, but there was no time for tenderness. From the tunnel exit came the echo of approaching boots. Heliox operatives led by a figure in a gray cloak, Elder Vial. The trader's voice carried easily through the chamber. "Spread out. The harvesters must be captured intact." Kai glanced at Sarah. "Now." He pressed the warden device. Instantly the floor trembled. Beneath their enemies' feet, the ground shifted from solid to soft. Vial shouted, but it was too late. The sand liquefied, swallowing half his unit waist deep. From hidden vents, sticky resin jets fired, hardening around them like amber. The ambush worked. The desert itself had turned on them. Vial stumbled back, barely avoiding the trap. His eyes went wild as he saw Kai emerge from behind a glass tube, the black device still glowing in his hand. "You ruined everything," Vial screamed. "Do you think the Confederation will let you keep this technology?" "They'll take it from you just like Heliox will." Kai's expression was calm, almost pitying. "Maybe, but at least we'll still be alive when they try." Vial reached for his weapon, but a sharp whistle split the air. Then a dart struck his shoulder. He collapsed instantly. paralyzed but breathing. In the shadows, Chief Kurun and his warden warriors appeared, silent as ghosts. "The betrayer sleeps," Kurun said grimly. "Now comes the storm." A roar of engines echoed across the valley. From the western ridge, Helioc's reinforcements advanced, 6 carriers, heavy artillery gleaming under the twin suns. Kai looked up at the horizon, mind racing. "If they breach the central hub, they'll destroy everything. What's your plan?" Sarah asked. Kai stared toward the cluster of harvesters rising in the distance like silver towers. "The harvesters aren't just machines," he said slowly. "They control humidity, pressure, even ion balance. If we push the system beyond its limits..." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're going to change the weather?" He nodded. "Exactly. Make the desert fight back. That could destroy the colony. It could save it too." Sarah placed her hand over his. "Then we do it together." He squeezed her hand once, eyes fierce. "Always." They ran through the tunnels toward the main control hub, with Korun and his wardens covering their retreat. Overhead, the sky began to swirl, dust rising in slow spirals as if the planet itself sensed what was coming. Outside, Helioc's troops set up their plasma cannons and prepared their final assault. Inside, Kai stood before the master console. His fingers flew across the controls, entering codes faster than any technician dared. The lights on the harvesters flared white, and a deep vibration rolled through the desert floor. Sarah watched, her heart pounding. She knew the risks. She knew the baby growing inside her would either be born into a paradise or not at all. "Ren," Kai said into the comm, voice steady. "Initiate protocol Weatherhand. Evacuate everyone from the hub. Whatever happens next, remember why we built this place." Ren's voice came back, trembling. "Yes, sir." The last words Kai whispered before the storm began were for Sarah alone. "If the sky can bleed for us, then today, it'll fight for us too." And as lightning cracked across the blood-red horizon, the war for Iridia truly began. The first flash lit the valley like a second sunrise. Clouds, thick, angry, and unnatural, spiraled above New Grain Line, churning with colors no sky on Iridia 9 had ever known. The twin suns vanished behind the storm Kai had unleashed. Below, chaos ruled. Helioc's troops shouted orders into dead comms. Their armored vehicles sputtered as the air around them turned electric. Sparks crawled over their metal plating like fireflies gone mad. From the command ridge, Director Prell stared in disbelief. "What in the void has he done?" he hissed. Inside the control hub, Kai Morales stood at the central console, drenched in sweat. The hum of the harvesters had grown into a deep, thunderous roar. Lights blinked red across the panels. Every system screamed overload. Sarah clung to the railing, her eyes fixed on the window as the storm grew darker. "Kai, the pressure levels are breaking limits." "I know," he shouted over the noise. "That's the point." The harvesters pulsed in sync, feeding energy into the atmosphere. The sky cracked open, first with wind, then with fire. But it wasn't rain that fell. It was a thick golden mist, glowing faintly as it touched the ground. Prell's soldiers raised their weapons. The mist clung to their armor, hissing softly. One by one, their energy rifles sparked, shorted, and died. The same fate struck their transports, their engines coughed, lights flickered out. In seconds, the entire Helioc's force was blinded, silenced, powerless. Sarah stared in awe. "What is it?" Kai managed a grim smile. "A conductive aerosol." The harvesters converted humidity into microcharged dust. "It fries circuits but leaves people unharmed." "You built lightning into the air," she whispered. Outside, Chief Korun and the wardens surged forward, moving like shadows through the glowing haze. Their silent weapons cracked against Helioc's armor, stunning but never killing. They fought for the land, not revenge. In the distance, a single figure stumbled through the mist. Director Prell, stripped of his soldiers, his sleek uniform torn. He staggered toward the hub, face twisted with rage. "You think this will save you?" he screamed. "The Confederation will see what you've done, turning a planet into a weapon." Kai stepped out onto the storm-battered platform, wind whipping through his hair. "We didn't make a weapon," he said evenly. "We made a choice to survive without masters." Prell drew a hidden sidearm, its beam charging. Before he could fire, a spear of lightning split the sky and struck the ground between them. The weapon flew from his hand, melted in the sand. Sarah appeared beside Kai, eyes glowing with reflection of the storm. "Leave now," she said. "Tell your superiors what happens when they try to own life itself." For the first time, Prell looked afraid. He stumbled back, then fled into the mist, vanishing into the storm he could no longer command. When it was over, silence fell heavy and strange. The glowing dust drifted away like dying embers. Slowly, light returned to the sky, a new, softer blue. The desert shimmered with moisture, the air rich and alive. The battle was won. But the world was forever changed. 6 months later, the people of New Grain Line gathered under a dome of clear glass. The Confederation had recognized them not as settlers, but as a sovereign colony. Iridia Freehold, Elder Vial, once branded a traitor, now worked humbly in the gardens. Chief Corin stood near the council table, his cloak heavy with sand. And at the center sat Kai and Sarah, side by side, leaders not by vote but by faith. Sarah's pregnancy showed now, her hands resting over the gentle curve. "He kicks every time you touch a console," she teased. Kai smiled softly. Already an engineer. Outside, the harvesters stood taller than ever, their hum no longer a warning but a lullaby. Water channels glittered in the sunlight. The desert had learned to breathe. They walked together to the edge of the settlement, where a small monument rose, a simple stone, carved with words in both human and Lyrian script. "When the world said no, we taught it yes." Sarah leaned against him, her voice quiet. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" Kai looked toward the horizon where a faint signal tower blinked, an old military frequency, one that shouldn't exist anymore. "Every ending's just the start of another storm," he said. Above them, clouds were forming again, not gray this time, but white and soft, heavy with rain. The first real rain Iridia had seen in 100 years. Sarah smiled. "You did it, Kai. You made the sky alive." He took her hand. "No," he said gently. "We did." As the first drops fell, they stood together, two souls from different worlds watching the desert bloom, and knowing that somewhere beyond those clouds, the universe had just learned what humanity was truly capable of. A whisper of thunder rolled across the valley, not in anger but in promise. The sky had fought for them, and it would never forget.